Hello everyone and good evening. My name is Lashek and welcome to today's political hissy fit. Today's hissy fit is about Wilbur Ross and top government officials in charge of accurately reporting the weather. Here's kind of what happened. Trump didn't want to go to Poland and get lectured about withholding military aid from Ukraine. So he blamed a hurricane for his need to stay home. But instead of paying attention to the hurricane, he went to play golf. When reporters asked him about the hurricane, he gave an outdated response from a half-remembered briefing he had a few days prior. And then when reporters made fun of him for being out of touch, he doubled down and drew a boob on the weather map, which everybody knows is totally illegal. Then, when his own government weather forecasting agency would not back up his boob, he got Wilbur Ross to blackmail them into agreeing. Now, everyone is so shocked that Wilbur Ross got caught up in such a blatant cover-up. I'm not. I mean, he just looks like the kind of guy whose diabolical plans are always foiled.
Inconceivable!
Take, for instance, the cover-up that initially got him the job as United States Secretary of Commerce. You would think such a position would require an eye for detail, strong mathematical skills, and an astute moral compass. But then you'd be wrong. You see, before Wilbur was hired by Trump to oversee the nation's economy, he was the chairman of a tiny bank on a tiny island called Cyprus. You may have even heard of it, referenced in the Panama Papers about 4,657 times. For those of you who don't remember the Panama Papers, they were leaked documents detailing financial information from shell companies, essentially make-believe companies, that were being used for fraud, tax evasion, evading international sanctions, and above all, money laundering. These Panama Papers were released when Wilbur Ross was already the chairman of the Bank of Cyprus for over a year. And though his bank was mentioned 4,657 times, Wilbur Ross did not get in any trouble. He claimed to have not known of any of the improprieties. Sadly, that makes him either the dumbest chairperson in banking history, or it makes him a brilliant criminal that covered up all the evidence that linked him to the crimes. Either way, Trump thought him totally worthy to be the Secretary of Commerce for the United States. But here's where it gets interesting. You see, the money that Wilbur helped launder was mostly Russian oligarch money. So let's just say that Wilbur's ties to Russia are more compromising than a swimsuit model attending a Charlie Sheen after party.
Wow, winning. That's how you perceive it.
Let's take a look at Wilbur's Russian ties. Wilbur Ross was chairman of the Bank of Cyprus from 2014 until early 2017, a position he shared with a Russian oligarch, former KGB agent and longtime associate of Putin, Vladimir Strelkovsky. Other members of the board included such names as Dmitry Rybolovlev and Oleg Deripaska. Dmitry Rybolovlev is a pretty infamous guy. He's known for purchasing Trump's mega mansion in Palm Beach for $95 million, which allowed Trump to more than double his $41 million investment during the time of the American housing crash. All the other houses were selling for cheap. The timing of the purchase was essentially a Trump rescue package. You see, Trump was suing Deutsche Bank to try to avoid repaying his $40 million real estate loan, which Deutsche Bank had called in. He lost. But luckily, Dmitry saved Trump from bankruptcy. And oddly after that, after being blackballed by all other US banks for failure to pay his loans, Deutsche Bank decided to give Trump even more money. According to Trump's own financial disclosures, the ones that he actually gave up, he has $364 million in loans from Deutsche Bank that will mature in the year 2024. Which must be a little hard on the guy when his businesses are doing so poorly. Why would Deutsche Bank give a guy that doesn't want to pay his loans even more money? Is that some sort of accounting error? Or is it a well thought out plan to compromise Trump? You see, just before Trump took office, Deutsche Bank was caught engaging in a $10 billion money laundering scheme for Russian oligarchs, pushing this money through its offices in New York and in Cyprus. Deutsche Bank was convicted of this crime by the Southern District of New York and had to pay $650 and $70 million in civil penalties. Essentially, the way it works is a bank does the bidding of its biggest investor. So in this case, Russian oligarchs. Even though Deutsche Bank is German-owned, it will still do the bidding of its Russian oligarch investors. It's the oldest scheme in the book. Find a dumb rich guy, call in his debts, and make him so desperate that he's easily compromised.
He's losing money at the other casinos. They're not even cheating him.
And have you looked into his shipping?
He got a bank loan for his own boat several years ago. Doesn't use Dunlars at all.
Make sure we own that bank by tomorrow. And tell the other shipping companies to stay away from Mondego. I want to give him no choice but to crawl back to Danglar. Now, tell the dealers. Take it all.
Do try to understand. I have a very large consignment of cotton ready to be sent. And I shall make my payment on the ship as soon as it is delivered. So obviously I need the vessel in order to deliver it.
Unfortunately, the bank can offer no further extensions, Count Mondego. I suggest you find alternate means of shipping.
Well, well. To what do I owe the honor, Count Mondego? I can imagine why you've been avoiding me after all these years.
I'm prepared to overlook your faults and perhaps resume our dealings.
Business not going so well these days?
Now, with all this evidence, you'd think it'd be impossible to cover up. Well, you'd be wrong again. One of Trump's first acts as president was to fire and replace 46 top government attorneys, including those prosecuting the Deutsche Bank case. So even though Deutsche Bank was convicted by the Southern District of New York, the federal government was going to prosecute them again for even more money. An open and shut case. But that kind of just went away. And another person that was sitting on Wilbur Ross's board of the Bank of Cyprus was Oleg Deripaska. You may remember Oleg Deripaska, who began paying Trump's campaign chairman Paul Manafort $10 million a year to act as a secret emissary for Russian President Vladimir Putin. He paid Manafort through the Bank of Cyprus. Records handed over to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation show that Manafort and his partner Rick Gates, another Trump campaign advisor, had at least 15 accounts at Wilbur Ross's Bank of Cyprus. Mueller's count indictment against Manafort and Gates charged the two men with money laundering and conspiracy against the United States. Wilbur Ross was somehow not even in the equation. How did he get overlooked? Even President Obama had enough intel on Oleg Deripaska's criminal conspiracy that he placed sanctions on Oleg to prevent him from committing any more criminal acts in the United States. Luckily, Trump came along, and with the help of Kentucky Senator and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he lifted the Obama-era sanctions on Oleg Deripaska. Oleg repaid the favor by investing $200 million in a new aluminum plant in Ashland, Kentucky, which will not only aid in voter turnout for Mitch McConnell's Kentucky re-election campaign, but also the aluminum that will be produced there will need to be shipped all over the world, which luckily enough, Mitch McConnell's fleet of 17 huge cargo ships can easily handle. Now, is all of this legal? It's kind of like marrying your second cousin. It's legal, but it's still incest. But all of it, and I mean all of it, can be traced back to Wilbur Ross's connections to Russian oligarchs. The question is Wilbur Ross a criminal mastermind or an idiot savant? It's hard to say. You see, since President Trump handpicked Wilbur Ross from a tiny island off the coast of nowhere, Wilbur Ross has been engaged in a few conspiracies of his own. Last but not least, the boob map scandal. My favorite has to be when Wilbur Ross committed insider trading by shorting stocks. And when asked about it, he had this to say.
When we spoke to him, David Weston spoke to him just a few weeks ago and asked him about the short selling, and he had to describe to us what short selling actually meant and why it didn't account for him. This is what he had to say.
This is not what you would call a typical short sale. What happened, some shares in one company were not physically in my possession, and there was a whole process I had to go through to get them into possession so I could sell them.
Now, that wasn't Invesco, but the idea that he was pushing back on any kind of ethics issue.
This response is hilarious to anyone who understands short selling, because he's essentially just bragging about committing the crime. The way short selling works is you sell someone else's stock at a high price and replace it after the stock's value drops. Then you get to keep the difference without ever taking possession of the stock, all without the owner of the stock even knowing it. To give you a better understanding, let's say there were some people in 1996 who were saving up for retirement and invested in Trump hotels and casino resorts, hoping that in 10 years they'd sell their stock for more money, make a huge profit, and retire. So after they initially bought the Trump stock, it was going to sit in stock exchange limbo until they cashed it in 10 years later. But if I could somehow communicate with myself in the past, I would tell my younger self, this Trump guy is a moron. He gets other people to ghostwrite his books, he sleeps with porn stars without using Jimmy hats, and he's gonna find a way to take his stock value from $250 per share and run it into the ground while the rest of the stock market increases in value. If I could get myself to short sell even one Trump share at $250, meaning I'd call a stockbroker and tell him to find a Trump stock in stock market limbo and sell it for me, with the understanding that I would buy it back and replace it before the owners of the stock would even know that it was gone. And then I waited 11 months and replaced it when the Trump stock would be worth $50 per share, I'd get to keep $200 profit for myself. This would be a great way to make money, but it would also be illegal because I'd be using an unfair advantage of knowing the future to make this trade. Sort of how Wilbur Ross uses his ability to change economic policies to give him an unfair advantage in predicting the future of stocks, and then shorting stocks based on that knowledge. What makes this even worse for Wilbur is he's not only using his insider knowledge to sell his own positions that he knows will lose him money, he's using insider knowledge to short sell other people's positions in order to make a profit, positions that he has no business being in the first place. This corrupts the entire stock market because other investors just need to copy Wilbur's trades in order to make a profit. In the position that Wilbur Ross is in as United States Secretary of Commerce, all the information that comes on his desk is insider knowledge. The guy should not be allowed to trade any stocks. I don't know how any of this is legal. The real question is, will Wilbur Ross be brought to justice? And for that, we go to our top correspondent, Psychic Violetta.
Okay, so Wilbur Ross, what is his future? What does his near future hold for him?
Okay, cut the cards. Okay. So his goals, to achieve as much as possible for himself. So those are his goals, that's the card that you cut with. He wants a good harvest. So he is in that position. He's not making that much money in the government position as he was making working for the banks officially, but outside the vision he's making connection and he is going to make decisions that will influence his investments. He's in love, but he will have but he will have a health problem. He will make stupid mistakes and he will be sorry, and it will be related to his investment. So that will be traceable, how he invests his money. So there will be a depression on his account.
I'd ask if he's going to go to jail, but we all know people that make that much money don't
go to the jail. No, but that was the card that was kind of flashing, so he might.
That's it for today. Make sure you like, subscribe, and join me on the next episode. And House Democrats, if you're watching, Why hasn't Wilbur Ross been brought to justice? He's already confessed about short selling right on camera. Just put Wilbur Ross on the stand. It's simple, honest, and fair. Later.
He loves to party, what's not to love? The run I was on made Jagger and Richard look like droopy-eyed armless children. That's how I party, that's how I party. I was banging 7-gram rocks, that's how I roll. Winning, I had 1 gear, go, epic winning. Party by quarter, and by winning. Win here, win there, win everywhere.
We're gonna win so much, you may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.